Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to my show, CULTS. It's the show where I drink beverages with you and we talk about cults. If you don't know me, my name is Mayfield, and today we'll be talking about ancient Roman cults, rating them based off of factors such as, am I gonna have fun in this cult, and what's the chance I'm gonna die? I know it's a little different from my usual culty videos, but I did want to try something new. Besides, you're getting like 5 cults for the price of 1. I'm still doing the tea party format because it's really fun for me, and also look, I made us fruit. I cut you apple, and there's cake for your health. Ooh, don't spill. Okay, so I've poured your tea and mine, so let's get started. I also feel like I need to throw in a disclaimer. Please don't join a cult. This video is for fun and educational purposes. And there's a reason I'm only rating cults that likely no longer exist. I'm never going to rate cults that are still like a thing, you know what I mean? Before we get into rating the cults, I want to give a little background on how cults were viewed in ancient Rome at the time. Roman cults were not generally viewed the same way we view cults today. It seems in ancient Rome, they were more tolerant to new religious ideas. Around this time, Rome had become a military power in Europe, and because of that, a lot of people were moving to Rome from a lot of different places, and they brought their ideas and religions with them. Cults back in ancient Rome were referred to as mystery cults, sacred mysteries, or just mysteries. Not all of the cults we're going to speak about originated in ancient Rome, but all of them were very prevalent there because it was such a cultural hub at the time. These cults were often shrouded in secrecy, and we only know anything about any of these cults because of what other people had written about them. There were an incredible amount of mystery cults back in the day, but I think I picked us some good ones, so let's go. I'm going to be keeping a few things in mind when I rate these cults. Number 1 is that we definitely want to have a good time. If you're going to join a cult, you might as well make it worth your while. Like, can I get away with both shenanigans and mischief? These are the questions we need to be asking. Number 2 is that we want to make sure we don't have a chance of being injured or dying in the cult. Like, do I need to cut off a limb to be in this cult? No thanks. Number 3 is, can we obtain social or political power by being in this cult? Like, can I get a leg up on society by being a member? Okay, so the napkins are gone now. We just had a bit of a snafu. The light fell forward on me and it knocked the camera into the table. Tea got everywhere. You know, ever since I started doing this tea time format, I am spilling a lot of tea. Maybe I need a sturdier table. We'll think about that later. So cult number 1 is a true classic. It's the cult of Dionysus. Introduced to Rome around 200 BC, it's in honor of the Greek god Dionysus, also known as the Roman god Bacchus. Bacchus? Bacchus. Dionysus seems to be the god of just about everything. Well, you know, like everything that matters. Wine, vegetation, fertility, religious ecstasy, ritual madness, insanity, and theater. So he's like the party farming god. Work hard, play hard, I guess. There were multiple festivals held in his honor, and frequently there were phallic processions. These processions would involve people carrying phallic symbols in the street all the way to a cult center, which is basically just either a place the cult held in high regard or it was where they would worship, all the while yelling obscenities as they journey there. However, the cult would also take part in animal sacrifices where they would pull the animal apart while it was still alive and then eat the meat raw. Because Dionysus is also the Roman god Bacchus, it would be remiss of me not to mention Bacchanalia. Bacchanalia were festivals held originally 3 times a year, and they were only attended by women. It eventually evolved to include men as well, and would become what is essentially a giant orgy 5 times a month, food and wine included. Busy schedule. At one point, the Roman Senate was like, wow, you guys are getting popular. We feel threatened by that. So they arrested thousands of followers and executed most of them. So like, where do we stand with this cult? What's the rating? It does sound like a lot of fun, very debaucherous. I kind of draw the line at eating animals raw though. Maybe I'll just call in sick that day. I don't feel like we have a huge chance of dying or being injured except for the part where everybody got executed at the end. We also don't sound like we have a good chance to get any political power. I think I'm gonna give this cult an 8 out of 10 because you know it sounds like insane fun, but if you don't dip out at the right times, you're gonna be in big trouble. Cult number 2 is a close friend to the cult of Dionysus. It's the cult of Pythagoras, and if you've ever heard of the Pythagorean theorem, yeah, it's the same guy. Pythagoras was a philosopher who is credited for the Pythagorean theorem, and he was also credited for discovering that music has mathematical foundations. The cult believed that geometrical proportion was equivalent to justice, so like a perfect square might represent justice being carried out correctly, if that makes sense. They also believed that after death, the soul would either be punished or rewarded, punishment being reincarnation or reward being sent to another world. Pythagorean followers thought that a healthy mind would create a healthy body, which is kind of true in a way. They followed a kind of vegetarian diet where they wouldn't eat fish, meat, or beans. This is Pythagoras refusing beans. I love this picture. They believed that this diet would help them achieve some kind of perfectionism, but not because they were abstaining from anything, just because they thought eating this way would be beneficial for their health and their bodies. They felt that killing animals for food was wrong, and that if they did have to kill an animal for whatever reason, it should not suffer needlessly. They believed that killing animals would diminish their moral status, and that needlessly killing animals, unless it was trying to kill you, was pointless. The Romans ate a lot of meat during this time period, so it was definitely a change of pace. The cult was said to live in a communal living situation similar to a monastery where they all shared their possessions freely. They vowed themselves to Pythagoras and the cult itself, and they were so devoted that they would often shun outsiders. Women were also prominent in this cult because originally Pythagoras' mother, wife, and daughters were all kind of in his educated philosopher circle, so women in this cult were given the opportunity to study philosophy because of this. Besides all of that, the cult was also super into numerology, which meant that they assigned magical meaning to math and numbers, particularly the number 10. So let's ask ourselves, would we join this cult? Let's be honest with ourselves, this one sounds very dorky. I mean, I'm all down for a vegetarian diet, but like math? Come on. There's zero chance of dying or being injured, so there's that, but there's also no chance of obtaining power either. It sounds like you're just going to be shut indoors doing math all day and sharing your washcloth with the other nerds that you live with, so I think I'm going to have to give this cult a 4 out of 10. So far, it seems that the theme is high risk, high reward. Let's keep going. Okay, so spoiler alert, honestly, the third cult sounds like a bit of a buzzkill. It's called the Imperial Cult of Ancient Rome. An imperial cult is where the leaders, either dead or alive, are revered as deities. Roman rulers were often put on the same level as gods. Many leaders in ancient Rome seemed to have cults that surrounded them, really just to gain social and political power. A good example of this is Julius Caesar, who came from two families who both claimed that they were descendants from gods, the gods Mars and Venus. He would often flaunt this fact in an attempt to get people on his side so that he could ascend the throne. He was even deified before his death, being given the name Divus Julius. These cults were so political that priests of this cult were often just political office holders, really only being priests of the cult in title. After Caesar was killed, his son Octavian ascended the throne, and he even dedicated a temple in Caesar's name. So this is just my opinion, but it seems like an imperial cult wasn't super popular in ancient Rome at the time, and it didn't really take off as well as other cults. Or it at least sounded like they were the least popular kind of cult. I mean, who would go worship the government and the leader or whatever? Like, that sounds so boring when you could just go to the Bacchanalia at the Grove down the road. So based on our rating system, what does this cult give us? No fun. Caesar was murdered, so you might get injured, but maximum political power. In the end, I think I need to give this cult a 2 out of 10. Our fourth cult is called the Cult of Cybele. She is a mother goddess who originated in Anatolia. The cult was brought into Roman society whenever there was a great famine occurring, and also they were losing all of the battles in the war that they were in at the time. Cybele was said to have manifested on this earth in the form of a black stone that came from a meteor. So the Romans had the stone brought to Rome, hoping that she would bless them with good fortune. The stone was brought to Rome, and eventually the war and famine ended, and they attributed it to her. After this, she was named the protector of Imperial Rome, and she became very popular because of it. She had a festival that was held throughout the month of March in which multiple events would take place over multiple days. These would mostly consist of public processions and symbolic rituals with rose petals and incense and stuff. Apparently it was pretty uppity. They didn't really allow lower class people to observe these processions. There was a ritual that did concern people, however. It was called the Day of Blood. On this day, followers of this cult would whip themselves, and they would whip themselves in such a way that their blood would spray onto these altars. They were trying to whip themselves, I guess, and then they would try and aim it. Some members would even perform castrations on themselves. They did this in honor of a priest of the cult whose name was supposedly Attis. Attis's story is that he castrated a king due to the king's unwanted sexual advances towards him, and in return, as the king is dying, he manages to castrate Attis back. Fellow priests of Cybele find the dying Attis lying under a tree, and after he does pass away, they bury him there. After burying him there, they castrate themselves in his honor. So therefore, the people who joined the cult of Cybele would often castrate themselves. Homage castration, I guess. But there were also members of this cult that believed that castrating themselves would give them the power of prophecy. So no wiener equals seeing into the future. So how about this cult? How do we feel about it? It has classy processions which we would get to be a part of, and that does sound like fun. Since the government liked the cult, maybe that means that they would leave them alone. Maybe you could get like a social leg up or some good connections. I feel like people would be like, oh my god, like wow, you were in the Sybil procession? So jealous. I don't know if I could get behind the self-flagellation, that part sounds pretty lame, but I also didn't read that it was mandatory. And I do not have a wiener, so I don't have to worry about castrating myself. Considering the fact that it seems like you can at least choose to have a regular time and you can get some personal gain out of it, I'm gonna give this cult a 9 out of 10. But you know, that's just like my opinion. You might want to rethink that score for yourself if you have a PP. So our fifth and final cult is called the Cult of Mithras, also known as Mithraism. Mithras is a Zoroastrian god of light and harvest. He is seen as the protector of truth and is kind of like a judge. Mithras was adopted by the Romans, not directly as Zoroastrianism, but they kind of made Zoroastrianism what they felt like it should be for themselves. This cult's many practices were super secret, like way more secret than all of the other ones apparently. But we do know a handful of very interesting facts about them. Apparently, the initiation process was extremely complex, with 7 layers of initiation that you had to complete before you were a fully fledged member. Within each of these layers would be tests. These 7 tests would be things like tolerating extreme heat or extreme cold, and they also had something called the ordeal pit. So there were multiple ordeal pits, but apparently at some point they were all covered up with floorboards. Whatever it was about the ordeal pits, they just stopped using them. Not sure what that was about, to be honest, but it sounds worrisome. The cult's members would also memorize specific answers for specific questions. Like somebody would ask them, who is the Father? And you as a member would have to respond, the one who gives us everything. Kind of like the Lord's Prayer, I guess, when you're in church and they're like, Our Father, and you're like, who art in heaven? You know what I mean? The members also called themselves a name that I absolutely cannot pronounce. Do you speak Latin? Let me know in the comments. How do you pronounce this? But this name that they would call themselves means those who are united by the handshake. So from this, we can only assume that they had a really dope secret handshake. The members, after being initiated into the cult to a certain level, were required not to do anything that might harm someone else lest they become impure. They also ate a lot of ritual communal meals together. Apparently banquets were a really big deal for them, and they would worship in these underground cave-like structures, many of which still exist today. So for our 5th cult, how do we feel about it? It sounds like after they covered up the ordeal pits, it ended up being safe-ish. And they had a secret handshake, and they ate a lot, and it was pretty popular back in the day, it sounds like, so you know you're gonna make a lot of friends. But it does sound like the initiation process is super long, and I don't know if I'm that committed. I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. So based on these ratings, if I was an ancient Roman babe, what cults would I join? Looking at the list, it seems like the cult of Sybil is the winner. I rated all of these cults based on my personal preferences and what I feel like I would probably care about. I don't think any of these cults still exist because, you know, like the Roman Empire fell and all that. Don't actually go join a cult, okay guys? We're doing this for fun. It's for the spice, the pizzazz. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you had a lot of fun. I know this was different. I'm trying out a lot of new things on my channel, so just let me know what you like and what you don't like. Please hit that like, subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps me out a whole lot. Anyways, I'll see you again next week, okay guys? Bye! Oh, do you like my grapes? Grapes. Do you guys like my water bottle? It's a phone. If you can see my boom arm, no you can't.